The setting sun painted the Arizona desert in brilliant shades of orange and red as Lieutenant Samantha Reed guided her F-35 through another routine border patrol. After 12 years in the Air Force, these flights had become second nature, though lately they felt more like a cage than freedom. The military had changed since the global defense initiatives began, becoming more focused on watching the skies than securing borders. The first indication that this night would be different came as a faint blip on her radar, followed by a brilliant streak of light cutting across the darkening sky. Her instruments went haywire as the object plummeted earthward, trailing fire and debris. "Control, this is Lightning 7, she reported, banking her aircraft toward the anomaly. "Tracking an unidentified object on trajectory for impact in Sector 4 to 9. "Static answered her call. Whatever this thing was, it was playing havoc with communications. Following protocol, she should maintain distance and observe. But something about the object's controlled descent suggested this was no meteor. The craft, and she was now certain it was a craft, crashed into a remote mesa with an impact that sent shockwaves through her fighter. As she circled the crash site, her training warred with curiosity. The wreckage didn't match any known aircraft design, its silver-blue hull reflecting the desert sunset in impossible ways. Banking around for another pass, she spotted movement. A figure emerged from the wreckage, tall and clearly injured, but moving with purpose. Before she could process what she was seeing, energy weapons fire erupted from the darkness, peppering the crash site with explosive force. 3 sleek, dark vessels appeared on the horizon, their designs as alien as the crashed craft. They were hunting the survivor, and Samantha had a front-row seat to first contact, one that was quickly turning into an execution. Her thumb hovered over the weapons system. Engaging could start an interstellar war. Not engaging meant watching a murder. "Damn it," she muttered, making her decision. She lit up her engines and dove toward the attacking ships, targeting systems locking on. "Unknown craft, this is the United States Air Force. Cease fire immediately." The only response was a barrage of energy weapons fire in her direction. Samantha rolled her fighter through the barrage, years of training taking over. Her missiles might not do much against their advanced technology, but she had surprise and human ingenuity on her side. She launched chaff and flares, confusing their targeting systems, then struck back with her gun, the rounds finding weak points in their shields. One of the pursuing craft exploded, while another broke off their attack on the crash survivor to focus on her. As she engaged in a dogfight that defied everything she knew about aerial combat, she caught glimpses of the survivor below, returning fire with their own weapon. The dance continued until her ammunition ran low and warning lights flashed across her console. But she'd achieved her goal. The surviving alien ships retreated, vanishing into the darkening sky as quickly as they'd appeared. Landing her fighter near the crash site, Samantha drew her sidearm and approached cautiously. The survivor stood waiting, weapon lowered but ready. In the fading light, she could see their crystalline armor was cracked, revealing blue-tinted skin beneath. Their features were surprisingly human-like, though their eyes held an otherworldly depth. "You risked your life to aid me," the alien spoke, their voice carrying a melodic quality despite its gravelly undertone. "Why?" "Because it was right," Samantha answered simply, keeping her distance but lowering her weapon slightly. "I'm Lieutenant Samantha Reed, United States Air Force." "I am Kalen," they responded, pressing a hand to their side where silvery blood seeped through their armor. "And I fear I've just made your world a target in a war you didn't know existed." Before Samantha could respond, Kalen's legs buckled. She rushed forward, catching them before they hit the ground. As she held the injured alien, her radio crackled to life with demands for situation reports and scrambled fighter signatures approaching on her radar. "Then I guess we better get you out of here," she said, making another decision that would change everything. "Can you walk?" Kalen nodded grimly. "We have minutes before more arrive. Not just my pursuers, but your people as well." Neither can find what's in my ship. What is in your ship? The truth, Kaelin said, their eyes meeting hers with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. About everything. Together they quickly gathered what they could from the wreckage, Samantha helping Kaelin transfer a mysterious container to her fighter. As they worked, she couldn't help but feel that her life's path had just shifted dramatically. She'd trained to defend her country, but now found herself aiding an alien fugitive for reasons she didn't fully understand. The sound of approaching helicopters echoed across the desert as they climbed into her fighter. "I hope you're worth all this trouble," Samantha said, starting the engine. Kaelin's expression was unreadable in the cockpit's dim light. "I suppose we'll find out together, Lieutenant Reed." As her fighter lifted off into the night sky, Samantha knew she was leaving behind more than just a crashed alien ship. She was leaving behind everything she thought she knew about her world and her place in it. But something in Kaelin's words, in their desperate fight for survival, told her she was making the right choice. Now she just had to figure out how to explain to her superiors why she was going AWOL with an alien fugitive and a mysterious cargo that apparently held universe-changing secrets. Something told her it seemed like a good idea at the time wasn't going to cut it. Dawn broke over the Rocky Mountains as Samantha guided her fighter toward an abandoned mining complex she'd once used for survival training. Her radar warning receiver hadn't stopped chirping since they left Arizona, tracking both military search patterns and the more ominous signatures of alien craft lurking at the edge of orbit. Beside her, Kaelin had fallen into a fitful sleep, their crystalline armor slowly repairing itself through some technology she couldn't begin to understand. The mysterious container they'd salvaged from the crash was secured behind their seats, occasionally pulsing with a faint blue glow that made her instruments flutter. As she landed in the shadow of a rusted ore processor, Kaelin stirred. "Your aircraft's power signature," they said, voice rough with pain. "It's too distinctive. They'll track it." "Already handled," Samantha replied, powering down systems. "Active scrambling and a few tricks I picked up from maintaining these birds. We've got maybe 12 hours before anyone gets suspicious about the ghost signals I left heading toward Mexico." Kaelin's lips curved in what might have been appreciation. "You're more resourceful than expected." "Thanks. I think." She helped them from the cockpit, supporting their weight as they made their way into the mining complex. "Now maybe you can tell me what's in that container that's worth starting an interstellar incident over." Inside an old foreman's office, Kaelin set the container down carefully. Their armor shifted, plates realigning as repair processes continued. "My people, the Valerian Ascendancy, have ruled this sector of space for millennia. We pride ourselves on being warriors, on strength above all else. But our leadership is corrupt, using that warrior culture to maintain power through fear and manipulation." They pressed their hand to the container, which hummed in response. "This contains proof, genetic research showing they've been secretly modifying our population, suppressing traits they can't control, engineering us to be more compliant while maintaining the illusion of strength." "And you stole it," Samantha said, understanding dawning. "That's why they want you dead. You're not just a traitor, you're a threat to their entire power structure." "The research also revealed something else," Kaelin continued. "Evidence of previous experiments, including on Earth. Your species' potential terrifies them, Lieutenant Reed. Humanity's adaptability, your capacity for both violence and compassion, your ability to unite against common threats while maintaining individual thought, these are traits they've spent generations trying to breed out of my people." Samantha absorbed this, her tactical mind already seeing the implications. "So Earth isn't just collateral damage in your rebellion. We're targets." "Yes. But also potentially allies." Kaelin winced as they shifted position. "If humanity learns of the Ascendancy's existence, if you begin preparing defenses, it disrupts centuries of careful planning. That's why they'll come for both of us now." "No witnesses, no warnings." A distant rumble interrupted them. Samantha moved to the window, pulling aside the dusty blinds. 3 black helicopters were approaching, their profiles definitely not military issue. "Looks like they've got human help," she muttered. "Private military contractors, probably. Your people work fast." The Ascendancy has maintained secret contact with certain Earth organizations for decades, Kalen confirmed. "Preparing for eventual conquest by ensuring there would be humans willing to help subjugate their own species. Traitors come in all colors, I guess." Samantha checked her sidearm, wishing she had more than a standard-issue pistol. "We need to move." "Wait." Kalen reached for their armor, detaching a section that transformed into a sleek rifle. "Take this. The controls are intuitive for someone with combat training." Samantha accepted the weapon, finding it surprisingly lightweight. "You trust me with this? You trusted me with your career, your life, and potentially your planet's future," Kalen replied. "Seems fair to return the favor." The helicopters were getting closer. Samantha could see armed figures preparing to fast rope down. "Any chance that armor of yours is back to fighting strength? Enough for what comes next." Kalen's expression turned fierce, reminding Samantha that whatever else they might be, they were a warrior born. "Together?" She nodded, surprised by how natural it felt to fight alongside this alien fugitive. "Together." The next few minutes were chaos. The alien weapon responded to her thoughts almost instantly, its energy bolts dropping mercenaries with precision. Kalen moved like liquid metal despite their injuries, their combat style a beautiful and lethal dance. They fought their way through the mining complex, using the rusted machinery for cover as more enemies rappelled in through broken windows and skylights. One of the helicopters exploded when Kalen launched some kind of projectile from their armor, the wreckage taking out a second chopper as it fell. But the third held back, disgorging more troops before retreating to call in their position. "We need transportation," Samantha shouted over the firefight. "My fighter's too obvious now." "The container," Kalen called back, their armor absorbing a direct hit that would have killed a human. "There's a beacon inside. If I activate it, my allies can find us, but so can our enemies." "Your allies?" Samantha ducked under a burst of gunfire. "There are more rebels?" "A growing number. But they're scattered, hiding." Kalen took down 3 mercenaries with a sweeping gesture that released some kind of shock wave. "The nearest are several hours away at best." Samantha made a quick decision. "Do it. We'll hold them off." Kalen nodded and sprinted for the container while Samantha provided covering fire with both her pistol and the alien rifle. She'd never felt so in sync with another warrior, their movements complementing each other perfectly as if they'd trained together for years instead of meeting hours ago. The container opened with a hiss, revealing complex technology surrounding a simple crystal that Kalen quickly activated. Almost immediately, more alarms began blaring from the sensors on their armor. "Multiple ships entering atmosphere," they reported grimly. "Not all of them friendly." "How long?" 20 minutes at most." Samantha grinned, the expression fierce and determined. "Then let's give them a show worth watching." As they prepared for the coming battle, Samantha realized she hadn't felt this alive in years. Everything that had seemed missing from her life, purpose, challenge, the thrill of fighting for something greater than herself, had found her in the form of an alien warrior and their impossible crusade. Now she just had to survive long enough to see where this path led. Somehow, she knew it would be worth it. The mountain air crackled with energy as the first Valerian ships pierced the clouds. Samantha and Kalen had fortified their position inside the mining complex, using the alien technology from Kalen's armor to set up defensive barriers. The mysterious container sat between them, its crystal still pulsing with an otherworldly rhythm. "Your rebels better have good timing," Samantha said, checking the energy levels on her borrowed weapon. The alien rifle had become an extension of her will, responding to her intentions with an accuracy that made her previous combat experience feel primitive. "They're not exactly rebels," Kalen replied, their armor now fully repaired and gleaming in the dim light. "More like truth seekers. Warriors who've broken free of the genetic conditioning." They turned to face her, their expression softening. "Like how you broke free of your orders to help me." Before Samantha could respond, the building shook as something massive landed nearby. Through gaps in the walls, they could see troops deploying from the Valerian ships, some in armor similar to Kalen's, others in darker, more threatening variants. "Those in black," Kalen explained, "they're called Shadowborn. Specially engineered elite forces, loyal only to the Ascendancy's ruling council. They feel no pain, no mercy." "Everyone feels something," Samantha replied, taking aim as the first enemies approached. "Even if it's just regret." The battle erupted with an intensity that made their previous firefight seem like a warm-up. Shadowborn troops moved with inhuman speed, their weapons carving through the barriers. But Samantha and Kalen had positioned themselves well, using the mining complex's layout to force the attackers into bottlenecks. Working in perfect sync, they held their ground. Samantha's human unpredictability complemented Kalen's superior technology and training. When a Shadowborn squad tried to flank them, Samantha used old mining equipment as improvised explosives, surprising enemies who'd never faced human ingenuity. "Your tactics," Kalen called out during a brief lull, "they're unlike anything in our combat databases." "It's beautiful." Samantha felt her cheeks warm at the unexpected praise. "Stick around, I've got plenty more surprises." A new sound cut through the chaos, energy weapons with a different pitch. Through the skylight, they saw sleeker ships engaging the Ascendancy vessels. The rebels had arrived. But their victory was short-lived. A massive warship descended through the clouds, its presence causing even the Shadowborn to pause. "The Archon," Kalen breathed, real fear in their voice for the first time. "The Ascendancy's military commander himself. He never leaves the capital world." The warship's main weapon powered up, targeting the rebel ships. But instead of firing, it suddenly lurched sideways, struck by missiles that seemed to come from nowhere. American fighter jets screamed past, more advanced than Samantha's F-35. "Looks like I'm not the only one who noticed something weird in Arizona," she said, grinning. "That's the 71st Squadron, they test experimental aircraft. Must have tracked us here." A new voice crackled through the complex's old radio system, somehow made functional by their alien tech. "Lieutenant Reed, this is Colonel Marcus Hayes of the 71st, thought you could use some backup." "Your military," Kalen said, watching the human aircraft harass the much larger alien ships with surprising effectiveness, "they're adapting to our technology so quickly." "That's what humans do," Samantha replied. "We adapt, we overcome, we survive." The arrival of both rebel and human forces had changed the battle's dynamic. The Shadowborn pulled back, regrouping around their landing ships. But the Archon's warship remained, its presence a looming threat. Then everything changed again. The crystal in the container suddenly pulsed brighter, responding to something. Kalen rushed to it, their eyes widening. "It's not just research data," they said. "The crystal, it's awakening other dormant genes. Not just in my people, but..." They looked at Samantha with newfound understanding. "That's why the Council was so afraid. Humanity has the same potential, the same locked abilities. We're not so different after all." The container hummed louder as more crystals emerged from its depths, each one resonating with a different frequency. Energy coursed through the room, through both of them. Samantha gasped as new awareness flooded her consciousness, enhanced reflexes, heightened senses, an almost instinctive understanding of the alien technology surrounding them. "The prophecies were true," Kalen whispered. "About our peoples being linked, about the potential for something greater than either of us alone." The Archon's voice boomed across the battlefield, transmitted through all channels. Surrender the artifacts and the traitor. This is your only warning. Samantha looked at Kaylin, seeing them in a new light as the crystal's energy flowed between them. Together, she asked, echoing their earlier exchange. Kaylin nodded, their hand finding hers. The touch sent electric shivers through them both as their newly awakened abilities resonated. Together. Above them, human and rebel ships continued to harry the Ascendancy forces. On the ground, more Shadowborn troops prepared for another assault. And at the center of it all, two warriors from different worlds stood ready to change the course of history. Samantha squeezed Kaylin's hand once before letting go to grip her weapon. Let's show them what happens when you try to suppress either of our species. The real battle was about to begin. The mining complex erupted in chaos as Samantha and Kaylin unleashed their newly awakened abilities. The crystal's energy had done more than enhance their natural talents, it had created a connection between them that made them nearly unstoppable in combat. Each could sense the other's intentions, moving in perfect harmony as they engaged the Shadowborn forces. Samantha's mind processed combat data with impossible speed, her borrowed alien rifle becoming an extension of her enhanced consciousness. She could see energy patterns, predict weapon trajectories, and exploit weaknesses in enemy armor that would have been invisible to her hours ago. Beside her, Kaylin moved like living mercury, their armor responding to thoughts faster than neural impulses. The crystals, they called out, deflecting a barrage of energy bolts, they're not just awakening abilities, they're restoring what was taken from both our species. The Ascendancy didn't just engineer their own people, they've been suppressing human potential for generations. Above them, the battle between human fighters, rebel ships, and Ascendancy forces lit up the morning sky. The Archon's massive warship hung back, its weapons charging for what would surely be a devastating strike. Colonel Hayes' voice crackled through their comms again, whatever you're planning down there, make it quick. We can't hold that behemoth off forever. As if in response, more crystals rose from the container, their resonance growing stronger. Each pulse sent waves of energy through the complex, affecting friend and foe alike. Samantha watched in amazement as some of the Shadowborn troops suddenly stopped fighting, clutching their heads as if waking from a long nightmare. The conditioning, Kaylin explained, their eyes bright with hope. It's breaking down. The crystals are freeing them. But the Archon had noticed too. His warship's main cannon swiveled, targeting the mining complex directly. This ends now, his voice boomed. You cannot be allowed to undo centuries of careful planning. The blast that followed would have vaporized them if not for their combined abilities. Samantha sensed the attack coming through her enhanced awareness, while Kaylin's knowledge of Valerian technology let them divert power from their armor to create a defensive barrier. The explosion still sent them flying, crashing through walls as the complex began to collapse around them. They landed hard, Kaylin instinctively shielding Samantha with their body. For a moment, they lay there, closer than they'd been before, both breathing heavily as debris rained down around them. Their eyes met, and Samantha felt something more than just the crystal's energy pass between them. I thought your people didn't believe in protecting the weak, she said softly, reminding them of an earlier conversation. You're not weak, Kaylin replied, their face inches from hers. You never were. None of your people are. That's what terrifies them. An explosion overhead broke the moment. Through the dust and chaos, they could see the Archon himself descending from his ship, his armor larger and more ornate than any they'd yet encountered. Where Kaylin's armor shimmered like liquid metal, his was dark and jagged, crackling with barely contained power. Centuries of careful breeding, he announced, his voice carrying artificial authority. Generations of genetic manipulation to create the perfect warrior race. And you would undo it all for what? Some misguided notion of freedom? For truth, Kaylin shot back, helping Samantha to her feet. For the right of all beings to reach their full potential. The Archon's laugh was cold, mechanical. Potential? You think these humans are our equals? They're barely out of their caves. And yet, Samantha said, stepping forward, we've got you running scared. She could feel Kalen's approval through their connection as they took up fighting stances side by side. The remaining crystals pulsed in sync with their heartbeats, their power flowing not just through them now, but reaching out to others. More Shadowborn troops were awakening from their conditioning. In the sky, rebel ships pressed their advantage as confusion spread through the Ascendancy forces. You're finished, Kalen declared. The truth is spreading. Every moment, more of our people remember who they really are. Who they were meant to be. Then you'll die together, the Archon snarled, his armor transforming into something monstrous. And we'll start the breeding program again. Stronger controls this time. No room for deviation or weakness. But as he charged them, Samantha and Kalen moved as one, their enhanced abilities and natural skills combining in ways that even the Archon's advanced armor couldn't match. Where he was programmed perfection, they were adaptive chaos. When he struck with overwhelming force, they flowed around it like water. His every calculated move was met with human inspiration and Valerian precision. Yet even with their combined strength, the Archon was incredibly powerful. His attacks drove them back, his arsenal seemingly endless. A blast caught Samantha in the side, sending her sprawling. Kalen moved to defend her, but took a hit that cracked their armor. You see, the Archon taunted. All your potential means nothing against pure, engineered perfection. Samantha pushed herself up, sharing a look with Kalen. Through their connection, a plan formed, dangerous, possibly suicidal, but very human in its audacity. Kalen's expression shifted from concern to fierce approval. You know what your perfect engineering forgot? Samantha asked, drawing the Archon's attention as Kalen moved into position. What's that, primitive? She grinned, blood on her teeth. Sometimes perfection is overrated. The real question was whether they could survive what came next. The Archon never saw their true attack coming. As Samantha held his attention, Kalen had been quietly directing the crystal's energy into the ruins of the mining complex around them. When Samantha gave the signal, a slight nod that meant everything, they struck. Not with weapons or enhanced abilities, but with the very ground beneath their feet. The old mine shafts collapsed in a carefully orchestrated pattern, the entire mountainside groaning as decades of abandoned tunnels gave way. The Archon's superior engineering meant nothing when the earth itself swallowed him. But they weren't done. As he struggled against the collapse, Samantha and Kalen channeled their combined power through the crystals, not to attack, but to reveal. Waves of truth-revealing energy washed over the battlefield, stripping away the layers of genetic conditioning and control that had kept the Valerian people enslaved for generations. You forget, Kalen said as the Archon fought to free himself, real strength isn't programmed. It's earned. Chosen. Fought for. Like how humanity chose to help a stranger, Samantha added, her hand finding Kalen's. Not because we were engineered to, but because we decided it was right. The Archon's armor crackled with failing power as more rocks crashed down around him. Above, the massive warship's crew was succumbing to the crystal's influence, generations of artificial loyalty programming unraveling in moments. The vessel listed in the sky as its pilots remembered who they truly were. You can't undo centuries of perfect design, the Archon raged, his own armor beginning to reject him as the crystal's power grew stronger. Our people need control, need guidance. No, Kalen replied, their voice carrying across the battlefield. What we need is freedom. The freedom to choose our own path, make our own mistakes, find our own strength. They looked at Samantha. The freedom to decide who we stand with. The Archon made one last desperate attack, channeling all his remaining power into a blast that could have leveled the mountain. But Samantha and Kalen were ready. Their combined abilities, enhanced by the crystals and strengthened by choice rather than programming, created a shield that turned his own energy back on him. The explosion that followed lit up the morning sky, but when the dust settled, the Archon lay defeated, his precious engineered armor scattered in pieces around him. Above, the warship's crew had surrendered to the rebels, while on the ground, more and more Shadowborn troops awakened to their true selves. Colonel Hayes landed his experimental fighter nearby as rebel ships touched down around them. The sunrise painted everything in colors of hope and new beginnings. "Lieutenant Reed," Hayes called out as he approached, eyeing Kalen with cautious respect. "I'm going to need one hell of a report for this." Samantha laughed, still holding Kalen's hand. "Would you believe it all started with a routine patrol, sir?" In the days that followed, the truth spread across both worlds. The crystal's power continued to awaken suppressed genes and break down artificial conditioning, not just in the Valorians, but in humans who had been unknowingly affected by generations of ascendancy manipulation. The Valorian people, freed from their genetic shackles, began the difficult process of rebuilding their society. Many looked to Kalen for leadership, but they insisted on helping establish a council where all voices could be heard, all paths respected. Earth's governments struggled to process the revelation of alien life and the complex history between their species, but the 71st Squadron's intervention had given humanity a position of strength in the negotiations. They weren't primitives to be conquered or controlled, but equals who had earned their place among the stars. Samantha found herself at the center of it all, working with both human and Valorian leaders to forge new alliances. The abilities awakened by the crystals remained, becoming a symbol of what both species could achieve when they embraced their true potential. "You never did tell me if I was worth all the trouble," Kalen said one evening, as they watched twin moons rise over the Valorian capital. The warriors' crystalline armor had been replaced with simpler attire, though they still moved with the same fluid grace that had first caught Samantha's attention. "I think you know the answer to that," she replied, turning to face them. Their connection, born in battle and strengthened by choice, had grown into something neither of their species had quite seen before. Yet another example of what was possible when artificial barriers fell away. "The Council wants me to continue as ambassador to Earth," Kalen said softly. "They think my connection to humanity makes me ideal for the role." Samantha smiled, remembering that desperate night in the Arizona desert that had started everything. "And what do you think?" "I think," Kalen replied, closing the distance between them, "that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." As their lips met, the crystals they both still carried pulsed in harmony. Somewhere in the galaxy, the last pieces of the Ascendancy's control were crumbling, replaced by something stronger, the power of beings, human and Valorian alike, choosing their own destiny. They had fought for what was theirs, not just territory or technology, but the right to be who they truly were. In doing so, they had found something neither species had expected, a future where strength came not from control or engineering, but from the freedom to choose, to trust, and to love. The stars stretched out above them, no longer a barrier between worlds, but a bridge to endless possibilities. Together, they had written a new chapter in the story of both their species. And this was only the beginning.